So I'm going to talk today a little bit about the Shalom Zachar celebration, since this week's Parsha Lech Lecha has the mitzvah of Bris Milah. So the Shalom Zachar is basically the Friday night before the Bris. The friends and family come to the home of the baby, the parents, or other close relatives or friends, and they do a little celebration after the meal, some drinks, something to eat, and that's basically what the Shalom Zachar is. So where does this minhag come from, and what is the reason for it? I should point out that this is an Ashkenazi custom and not a Sephardic custom. The Sephardim have a celebration the night before the bris, which they call Brit Yitzchak. So it actually is based on a Gemara, which says that Rav Shmuel and Rav Asi went to a Shavua Habein, and some say they went to a Yeshua Habein. And whatever they went to, there was a little argument at the door who should go in first. Rav didn't want to go in front of Shmuel because Shmuel had once healed him. Shmuel didn't want to go in front of Rav because Rav was his teacher. Rav didn't want to go in front of Rav Asi because Rav Asi was older than him. So there was like this stalemate at the door until they figured out what to do. So the point is that there are different opinions about what these are. Rashi says Shavua Habein is the Bris Milah, which happens a week after the birth of a son. Shavua means a week. The Maharshal, Reb Shlomo Luria, however, says that Shavua Habein means a celebration in honor of the birth of the son, and it's not the bris itself. It's a celebration before the bris, pretty much what we call a Shalom Zachar. This is actually supported by a brisa that is in Avel Rabsi, what is called Masechta Smachos. It's printed in the back of Masechta Avodah Zarah. Now, our version of that tractate does not have this part of the brisa, but it is quoted in the Ramban and in the Maharatz Geos. The brisa says that if a person has a choice to go to a Shavua Habein or a Shavua Habas, he should go to a Shavua Habein. Now, clearly, there is no bris for a girl, so obviously this is a celebration that is not related to the bris itself, and therefore it might apply to girls as well, and evidently in those days they had such a celebration. So the point is that that is the opinion of the Maharshal. Anyway, Yeshua Habein is also an argument. Rashi says it's a Pidyon Haben, and Tosfos says it is a celebration in honor of the salvation of the son, i.e. that he was born safely and soundly, and that is a celebration other than the bris, which could very well be the Shalom Zachar. Actually, that's what the Trumas Hadeshen says. The Mahari Isserlon says that, according to Tosfos, this is referring to the celebration we do on Friday night, which really we could do any night of the week after the birth of the baby to celebrate the birth itself and the safe birth and so on. But we do it Friday night because that's when a lot of people are at home. So that's the source in the Gemara, perhaps, for this custom. As far as the reason for it, so we just mentioned one reason, and that is to celebrate the birth, safe birth, and so on. Another reason, based on the Maharshal, who says that Shavua Habein is referring to the Shalom Zachar. So along those lines, the Yavitz, Rabbi Yaakov Emden, says that it is to remind the son of his oath. Before baby is born, baby boy is born, he takes an oath that he's going to keep the Torah and the mitzvahs. So on the first Shabbos, which is kind of the first mitzvah that the baby is experiencing, we remind the baby of their oath, and that's why it's called Shavua Habein, the oath of the son. One of the famous reasons for this custom is because the Gemara says that a baby boy is taught the entire Torah in utero. And then before the baby is born, an angel comes and hits him, and he forgets what he learned. Now, why is it that the baby has to learn the Torah? There are different explanations. Some say it's that the Torah is really beyond the grasp of human intellect, especially the secrets of the Torah. And it's only a soul that is not fully in the body, that's kind of hovering over the body, that kind of soul can understand the Torah. And then, since the soul understood it once already, it's easier for the person to grasp later on in life. But they have to forget it so that they should be able to have free choice and they should be able to toil in the Torah themselves. And this explains the Gemara in Megillah, which says, Yagaita umatzasa tamen. If you toil in Torah, Rashi says it means if you toil in Torah and you are successful, that is believable. But the word is umatzasa, and you find it. And it's like a lost object that you had once, you lost it, and now you're finding it. That's referring to the Torah, which you had as a baby, forgot when you were born, and now you're rediscovering it. The Aruch LaNer, Rabbi Yaakov Ettinger, in his commentary on the Gemara in Nida, page 30b, says that the reason that the child studies the Torah is to be able to make an oath. To be able to make an oath that they're going to keep the Torah, they have to first study the Torah to know what it is. But then again, as we said, they have to forget it so they'll have free choice. But in any case, since the baby forgets the Torah as they're born, the Maharal says, by the way, that the hitting of the baby by the angel means when the baby's soul is forced into its body. So at that time, that is when he forgets the Torah, simply because an angel, a soul in a body, does not have that same ability to retain and comprehend all of those secrets of the Torah. So in any case, we come to console the baby over that loss on that Friday night. Now, the reason that we do this on Friday night, and how are we even consoling the baby by coming to visit? What is that about? So the idea is that even though the child forgot everything, it's up to the parents to teach it to them again. And the child is concerned that maybe the parents won't put in the full effort to do that. And that's why on Friday night specifically, we make a feast. And it says in the Gemara that all your income is predetermined for the year, besides for what you spend on Shabbos and Yom Tov and what you spend on educating your children. So therefore, the baby sees, just like the feast is beautiful and lavish and the parents don't care about the expense because they know that it's not taking away from their income. The same is true about the expenses for Torah study, that the parent is not going to be stingy on it and will spend enough, and therefore the child is consoled. Another explanation, a famous explanation, is that the Medrash says that the reason that a baby has the bris on the 8th day, as well as a sacrifice, baby animal cannot be sacrificed before the 8th day, is because they have to experience Shabbos first. So the Medrash gives a mashal, parable, like a king who says, in order to have an audience with me, you must first see my queen. So Shabbos is the queen, and therefore the baby has to have Shabbos before he can come close to Hashem, so to speak, with a bris, and a baby animal before it can be sacrificed. So the idea behind this is that Shabbos is the day of the week that gives strength to the entire week. According to the Zohar, the energy of the coming week comes on Shabbos. So therefore, before being able to be sacrificed or brought to Hashem, the baby, whether the human being or the animal, has to have the strength and has to be a proper being to be able to be presented to Hashem. And that's where they need to experience Shabbos to be strengthened by it. That is the explanation of Rabbi Avram Sabe, who was a great sage in Spain and was forced to leave as a result of the Inquisition and the expulsion, and he ended up in Morocco. And his granddaughter was the wife of the Beis Yosef or Yosef Karo. Now, the Chassam Sofer explains that there is a connection between the two reasons that I just mentioned, and that is because the baby forgot the Torah, that's why it needs Shabbos to be prepared to greet Hashem. Had the baby remembered the Torah, that would not be necessary because the Torah itself would make the baby worthy of the bris. Now the question is, why does a baby girl not get a Shalom Zachar, or Shalom Nekeva to be more precise? Of course, the custom is that there is a celebration for the birth of a baby girl, usually at a Kiddush, usually after the naming of that girl. But why not the idea of the Shalom Zachar itself? So, according to the opinion that the Shalom Zachar has to do with forgetting the Torah, it would seem that girls do not have to study the Torah in utero, since they don't have to study the entire Torah when they are born either. They have to study the parts of the Torah that are relevant for them. The other parts they can study, but they're not obliged to study. So therefore, that reason of learning it and forgetting it does not apply. As far as the reason that Shabbos is a preparation for the bris, obviously that does not apply because they do not have a bris. Now, as far as the reason of the oath, this is difficult because why would it would seem that the girls should also make an oath and therefore should be reminded of that oath, just like the boys are, as the Yaivitz explained, as Yaakov Emden explained. So what he says is that according to the Kabbalah, every soul is actually made of a male and female aspect, and the soul is divided and put into different bodies, and it reunites upon the marriage. And therefore he says it is sufficient for the boy to swear, and he represents both him and his future wife. So therefore we don't need to remind her of the oath because her future mate is going to be reminded in any case, or perhaps was already reminded. And lastly, according to the opinion that the Shalom Zachar is to thank Hashem for saving the baby, so that would apply to a girl as well. And in fact, it would seem that that is fulfilled through the Kiddush and the feast that is done at that time to celebrate the birth of the girl and the safe passage when she was born. And this is supported, like I mentioned earlier, by the Braisa that is quoted by the Ramban and others, that there is a concept of a Shavua Habas, of a celebration in honor of the daughter. An interesting explanation I found from Rabbi Yosef David Rubin, the Sassover Rebbe in New York, who passed away in 1983, that the name Shalom Zachar comes from the fact that it says in the Gemara that when a baby boy is born, he brings peace to the world, and that he's born with a loaf in his hand, meaning to say that the future parnasa, income, that he's going to make is already brought into this world in terms of Hashem's blessing at the time of his birth. Now, it says elsewhere in the Gemara that the main source of strife in a family is the lack of money. And Rav Papa in the Gemara says that this is why people say when the barley is finished in the jug, that's when an argument comes knocking. So people argue often when there is not enough money. And therefore, because the future parnasa is brought into the world at that moment, so that brings peace to the family. And in relation to this, he quotes one of the previous Sassover Rebbes who says that the baby brings parnasa not just to his future family, but to the family that he's part of at that time. Because the Gemara says he's born with a loaf in his hand. Obviously, the baby can't eat the entire loaf. He leaves over plenty for his parents as well. Of course, that's not literal, but conceptually, leaves over plenty of the bracha for his parents as well. Now, in a case where the Shalom Zachar can be held in the home where the baby is, that is preferred, because that way the baby is consoled, like we said, and is reminded of the oath, like we said. But if it's not possible, it can be celebrated elsewhere because the other reasons apply in other places, celebrating the Shabbos before the bris, as well as celebrating the safe passage of the baby. Now, an interesting question is if there are 2 Friday nights before the birth of the baby, before the bris of the baby, if the baby is born early on Friday night and there's time to do a Shalom Zachar that week or the next week, there is a question which week is better. On the one hand, the first Friday night is the one that would be better for the baby's safe passage. As far as comforting the baby, perhaps the second Friday night would be better because presumably the baby's in the hospital the first Friday night and will be home the next Friday night. As far as celebrating the Shabbos before the bris, either one would be fine. Practically, usually the first week is not practical because people don't know about it and the parents are not even around and they didn't get a chance to buy stuff. So practically, it is advised to simply do it on the second Shabbos. If a baby is born premature and needs care, it is better to wait until the baby has recovered to be able to do the Shalom Zachar, and that way it's also a celebration of the baby's safe passage and health. I wish you all a good Shabbos. May we only experience simchas in our lives.